Again, good morning to all of our visitors and our family that meets here at Woodlawn. We're glad that you're here, that you were able to take the time and be a part of our number today. If you're visiting with us, we want to encourage you to fill out one of those cards from the back of the pew in front of you. Pass that to the end of the aisle. One of our young men will pick that up at the end of services. And if they don't, you can just leave it there and I'll get it on Tuesday. We won't be here tomorrow. Tomorrow is a holiday and the office will be closed. And I love this time of year. I love Praise in the Park. It's one of my favorite days. We have Church Eat Church. Then next Sunday, we have our gospel meeting that starts with Vance Hutton. That's Hope Cackelman's father will be here from Double Springs, and he'll be preaching to us during our gospel meeting next week in Homecoming. And that's Church Eat Church. And also tomorrow, Memorial Day, it's a holiday, and tomorrow is a special day because I will celebrate 16 years of being happily married to my wife. We've been married 18. But 16 years are the happily married ones. Those are... I heard that done. I've been dying to do that for 2 years, and I forgot last year, but I got it this year. Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6. Big faith. That's what we've been talking about over the past few weeks. Noticing those individuals that we know in our life that we see and we almost envy. And that's a good word to use here, but envy is a bad thing. But when we look at someone else's faith and we look at they're just so devout in their faith and you can tell that it doesn't seem like anything wavers them. They're just so strong with their faith. And you look at them and you think, man, I'd love to have a faith like that. I would just love to have a faith that is so big. God told us He wants us all to have big faith. He wants us all to be able to have that faith so that we could remove mountains. To have that faith so that we could be able to step out and walk in ways and walk in places and do things that we alone did not think we would be able to do, but we have the trust in God that He's there for us and He will provide those ways. A big faith in which that even when we are hit with turmoil, even when we are hit with pain and suffering and the human condition that exists today, that we're able to rise above that because we know that we trust in something much bigger than ourselves. And to have that big faith we must understand the concept that God provides for us when He just simply says, trust me. Throughout the whole Bible, from day one until even today, God wants us to know that all He wants from us is our trust. God says, even though the world may say this, my way is better. Trust me. Even though there's so many other things that you can do, I've got something else in store for you. Just trust me. Seeing these people that have that trust, seeing these people in our lives that have that big faith, there's some common denominators we've been talking about. We call them catalysts. These catalysts that God can use within our lives to blow up our faith. And just as a quick review, we looked at the first week we did this was practical biblical teaching, where we get that teaching where somebody puts something before us as, I've been to church all my life, or I've never been to church, and I never studied the Bible, or I've studied the Bible all my life, but then all of a sudden I met this individual, and they taught me something that was real. And I heard a class, or I read something that was in the Bible that made life applicable to me today. It made the Bible real to me. Where I could use it today. That it wasn't just a history lesson. It wasn't just a story. It was something that was practical that I could put in my life. Once they got that, their faith blew up quickly. It ignited. The second one that we looked at was providential relationships. That God put certain people in our life. And people say, these people are the people that will say, well, I didn't have much faith. I really didn't trust God that much. I never had been to church. And then all of a sudden I met this person. All of a sudden I met this woman, or I met this guy at work, or this guy that was in my class at school, and we started talking, and I saw him praying at his meals, and I asked him about his faith, and then he started telling me, and I believe with all my heart that God puts those people in our lives. I believe God put Leah in my life, and some of you in my life, and last week I talked about some of those individuals that I believe God, without a shadow of a doubt, put those people in my lives to bring me to where I am today. I think He does that for all of us. These people that can cause our faith just to explode in ways that we never thought we would be able to do it on our own. There's 5 of these. We're going to take our time with them because I think they're important. Those are the first 2. When you look at the first 2, you really can't do anything for that. Those are things that God does, right? I mean, you really can't do anything about a providential relationship. You can't make a providential relationship happen. But you can increase the chances. That's what we talked about last week. Using that as leverage, put ourselves in an environment where those positions, those relationships might be more likely to occur. That's why we all had the name tags last week. That way we could walk around and see people that we might know, but we didn't know their name. We knew who they were. We know something about them, but we didn't know them, and it gave us an opportunity to increase the chances of finding that providential relationship. And I believe that God caused somebody to find somebody last week to help their faith grow. And today, though, is a little different, because today is something that I believe God puts forth to us that we can do. The others, practical biblical teaching, that's someone teaching us. Providential relationships, that's God putting those people in our lives. But this is something that I believe God has in store for us that we have somewhat of a control over. And it's really the only one that does that. It's private disciplines. Now, when you say that word, private disciplines, there's all kinds of things that might come into your mind. Private in the sense of they're not done publicly, they're done for yourself. They're done private. It's not something that's done so other people can see. It's something that's done on their own for their own personal growth. Discipline means that it's hard work. It's something that you have to work at to do. It's not something that's just really easy. And I'll give you an example. If you've really tried to seriously diet, a lot of times you don't tell people that you're dieting, do you? Because you don't want people really to know you're dieting. You want them just to see the end result of the dieting. Everybody knows that person that says they're always on a diet, and you look at them and you say, really? I mean, really? I mean, you've been on a diet for 20 years now. Nothing. This is something that you do private. It's not for show. This is something that you do for yourself. It's private, and it's something that you have to work at. And that's not a selfishness. I'm not going to talk about things that are selfish, that we do for selfish reasons. I'm talking about the public things that we do. That's for selfish reasons. These are for reasons only between you and God. And I think there's several of these that we could talk about. There's 2 that we're going to talk about in this text. There's 3 in this text, and I saved the last one because I really want to spend a little more time on it later. But let's look at those first 2. Private disciplines that God has in store for us. Wait, let me preface this. Sometimes my job can be a little difficult, because sometimes the things that come from the pulpit, people perceive as though they're coming from me, from the preacher. That preacher said this, and that preacher said that. And I want you to understand that I wish, maybe like some of you, that these things weren't the case. That I didn't come up with these. That these are disciplines that God has given us. That God says, I think this is what's going to help your faith explode. And I might not like it, but I have a responsibility to relay it. In fact, some of it is hard. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for me to do, and it's very difficult for others to do. But that doesn't mean that it's not important. So understand what is said is coming from God. It's not coming from me. Now, I'm not saying these things to make you angry. I'm not saying these things to frustrate you. I'm not saying these things that if you don't do these things, that your faith is about this time. I'm saying that these things are things, disciplines that God's provided that'll make us, boom, explode our faith. Like Wile E. Coyote pushing the little box of TNT to explode. That's what these things are going to help do to our faith. And let's look at what he says in Matthew chapter 6. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people, in order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Practicing your righteousness before people, because if you do that, then you don't get the reward from God. When you hold this passage, I want you to look at Isaiah chapter 48. This one's on the screen. Thus says the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Isaiah writes, I am the Lord your God, who teaches you to profit, who leads you in the way you should go. Oh, that you had paid attention to my commandments. Then your peace would have been like that of the river, and your righteousness like the waves of the sea. Your offspring would have been like the sand, and your descendants like its grains. Their name would have never been cut off or destroyed from before me. Now what's God say here? Look at what it says. I am the Lord your God. I can teach you to benefit. I can teach you to profit. I lead you in the way that you should go. If you had just listened to me, God says. If you just listen to my commandments, if you just listen to what I had to say, then, and you look at the context of the captivity and the Israelites and their waywardness and their unfaithfulness to God, if you just listen, God said, then your descendants would be like the sand. Then your descendants would be like the grains. You would have peace. Oh, you would have so much peace in your life if you would just listen. See what God's saying right there again? Trust me, because I know better. When you do the acts of righteousness, you don't do them to be seen before men. Because when you do those things to be seen of men, you get no reward from God. Acts of righteousness. That's what we're going to call private disciplines. That's what we're going to reveal to ourselves as what this private discipline is that God has. Continue what he says. When you give to the needy, you sound no trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogue and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say unto you, they receive their reward. But when you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Those first words there, that first word in that chapter 6 verse 1, beware. Some of your other Bibles might read, be careful. Be on guard. Pay close attention. What that means is that's red alert, really. God says, here's a red alert. Be careful. Make sure you're watching what you're doing. Because when you give, you are not to give like these people. You're not to be like these people who give of their means in order to be seen of men, who give to the needy, who write the big check, so to speak, and say, here is my money to you, Mr. Poor Man. Would everybody please take note and look at what I am doing, because I am a wealthy man, but I am giving of my means to this poor individual soul. Now all of you clap and applaud me for my good deeds and let me bow before you. That's what the Pharisees were doing. They would go before people. They would help the needy to be seen of men. It were the ones that they wanted to put the change with the dollar bill, so when they heard them put it in the cup, you could hear it, and other people would take notice of it. Now this is not tithing. This is not the check you just put in the plate. That's not what we're talking about. That's something totally different. Because the Jews would give, how we say 10%, we don't really say that. We just provide that as an opportunity in Scripture. That's the starting place that God does for the Jews, is 10% of our living that we're to give back to God. Now some of you may give more than that, some of you may not. But 10% is the good starting spot. When we look at what the Jews did, some of them would give upwards, they're giving to the temple, just what we'll be giving to the church of the Lord, up to 20% of their living. This is over and above that. This is something totally different because it says when you give to the needy. Your Bible, if you have an old Bible, if you have a King James Version, and maybe an NIV, it's going to read, when you give alms. The word alms there is a designation that's given of what you give to the person that's at the temple waiting, that's poor, that's lame, that's a beggar with their cup, asking people for help, and people would just, out of the generosity of their help, give of their means and lay it down there when they walk in. This is extra. This is those individuals that are waiting at the intersections. This is those individuals at times that are waiting at Walmart that need your help, that are needy. Not giving to a certain cause. I'm talking about people that are specifically poor and needy. Now I know, oh Matt, when we give to them, we may just be endorsing their lifestyle. And how do you know that they're legitimate when you're giving to them? And how do you know that they're really telling the truth? They could be making $100,000 on people's donations and not have anything wrong with them whatsoever. That's not my problem. That's not your problem. You're not necessarily giving it to help them, so to speak. You're giving it because it is a private discipline. The people that give to be seen of men, it says they have their reward. What's their reward? What's the reward when you give before men? What's the reward you get? It's honor, isn't it? When you give to be seen of men, you want to receive recognition. You want to receive honor. But listen how he says to give. When you give to the needy, here's a phrase, it's in the Bible, you didn't even know it was in the Bible. You've said it before, but you didn't know it was in the Bible. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be done in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm not saying you give to be rewarded by God. I'm not saying, because the people that give to be seen of men, they have their reward. They put their money out where people can see it. They make a big to-do about it. And they have the reward of the honor that they receive from individuals. I'm not saying that. And you may be saying, but I don't give to the needy to get a reward, Matt. And that's admirable. I don't necessarily do it either. When people come to the building and need help and we give it to them, if we don't have anything here, I give them a little something. I'm not doing that to get a reward. And you others have done that too. You don't do it to give it. You do it because this is the right thing to do. But God says when you do it, I'm going to reward you. I'm going to give you honor. And it's not necessarily the honor that you get from people. It's going to be a bigger honor because you're honoring me. God says when you give to those, I'm going to give you honor. God is going to give me honor. I'm not saying we do it to get that honor from God, but just know that when you do, God gives it. He gives it to you. Because that's just what He is. He gives us all spiritual blessings. He rewards us. Not that we do it for the reward. He rewards us. And the reward will come later on. It's a extended leave for a reward. It's not something that you get in the here and now like those people that give. So when we look at these private disciplines, God says that when you give, you don't know what your right hand and your left hand is doing. You give it in secret, so your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Now, here, the serious question right here, of this point right here, is do you believe that? Do you actually believe that when you help the needy, that God is going to reward you? Because I don't know that we do. I don't know that we truly, honestly put our faith behind that and believe it. Because if we truly believed it, there would be no angst. There would be no ill feelings of, oh, here comes the plate. He's passing the bucket. He's talking about money again. There would be no feelings of that. If we truly believed that God would reward us, when we saw an opportunity, we'd say, oh yeah, man, here, that's right, there, I'll give to you. That's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's not a chore. You see, God says, trust me. And let me tell you, we do trust God. We trust God with every ounce of everything that we have. We put everything we've got into God from the last breath until we meet the Lord. From when we take that last breath until we meet the Lord. Do you know why we trust God with everything we got from that last breath until we meet the Lord? Because we have no choice. From that last breath back, that's where we have the choice. And that's where we typically don't buy into it. So it makes sense. If God says to trust me, He would mess with the things that we put our trust in the most to teach us the lesson. Money. Our trust in money. We know money is a medium of exchange. It's essential for us to have, that we have to have it to survive. That's how we eat. That's how we live. That's how we pay for food, pay for our homes. That's how we do things. We know we have to have money. So money is not the issue with God. Money's not the issue. God don't need your money. Money is a faith issue. Money is how much trust do you put in me over this? How much emphasis do you put in me, God says, or how much do you put in your money? Because when you look at our money, we put a lot of our trust in our money because it enables us to do things. It helps us to control our environment. It helps us to make things great for us here in this life. God says, you don't be concerned. You can look on over in Matthew chapter 6. When you look on over, I believe there it is in verse 19. Don't lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust or thieves can break in and steal. You lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven where there's no moth, no rust destroys, no thieves can't come in and steal it. For where your treasure is, that's where your heart is also. Where your money is, that's where your heart is. That's where you put your trust. So you gotta, I don't like to hear this. I don't like it no more than you do. But the fact is, we don't believe when God says that if you give in secret, that you give to the needy in private, that I will reward you. God will reward. What we do is we rationalize it and we try to second guess ourselves and we say they don't really need it. They make more money than so-and-so does. They don't need that. They're lying to me. I've seen them. I know they can get out and do. They can go do this. They can go do that. I know that. And in our mind, we rationalize it. Why do we do that? So we can hold on as tight to this as possible because we're so afraid we might lose it or waste it. Because we don't want to waste this so much because this is what we trust in. Amen? This is what we hold on to. So God says, if you want your faith to explode, and we're not even going to be able to get into the second one. If you want your faith to explode, there's a private discipline that you can practice of being able to give to the needy. And this is not your contribution. This is the extra. This is what you give extra over and beyond to the people that need it. And you do it just like that. And the more you put your trust in God and the less you put your trust in money, that faith in God will continue to explode. That's why it was such a big issue for the rich young ruler. You remember that guy? You remember the rich young ruler? What good thing can I do? I've kept all the commandments. I've honored my father and mother. I haven't killed anybody. I haven't committed adultery. I haven't stolen. I don't make any idols to you. I haven't done any of those things that I shouldn't do, and I'm doing all that I'm supposed to. But what can I give extra? What can I do extra? And Jesus says, you go and you give all that you have to the poor. You do what? Sell all that I got and give it to... Now, God's not telling us today. He's not saying if you really want to have big faith, go sell your house, and if you get $250,000 from your house, you give the $250,000 to the church. You give the $250,000 to the nursing home or to the children's home, or you give the $250,000 to whatever thing. God's not saying that. He's saying, I know your heart. And you're called the rich young ruler for a purpose. Because you're rich. And you got a lot of stuff. And you really want to know if you want to go above and beyond, if you want to know what it's going to take to make your faith blow up, get rid of all your stuff. And put your trust solely in me. Now, no doubt in my mind, that if that man would have went home and sold his possessions and given them to the poor, that God would have blessed this man more than he could ever imagine. But you know what? We'll never know. We'll never be able to see that. You know why? Because the man went away sorrowful because he had much possessions. Because he said, I want to serve God, but I put my trust over here in this stuff. If I give this, what might happen to me? My retirement's gone. If I do that, then I don't have any way to survive. If I do that, how am I going to live? What was that verse again? You remember that verse that we just saw in Isaiah? Did you see what God says? I am the Lord your God who teaches you to profit, who leads you in the way that you should go. And another way to read this last part, boy, just think what your life would be like if you trusted me all the way. Just think what life would have been like. And I like I told you, I didn't mean to spend the whole time on the money issue. I had two more I wanted to hit on. And I don't like it either. I don't like it. Because I'm just like the next guy. I'm just like you. But that doesn't mean that God doesn't want us to hear it. Putting our trust God. Private disciplines will help our faith explode. There are two more. I'm going to go on and tell you what they are. They're prayer that navigates our time. That's the giving up of our time to pray. Because it takes time to pray, doesn't it? And then there's fasting. And that's giving up our food. Now, you look at the things you put your trust in. I put my trust in the most. My food, my time, and my money. And you hear what I just said? My food, my time, my money. It's all God's. It's all His. He's just allowing, none of it's mine. None of it. I don't care how hard you worked. I don't care how many hours you put in, how many overtime shifts you put in. I don't care what you've done. It ain't yours. It ain't mine. It's all His. It's a medium of exchange that He's allowed us to use. And when we look at the reward that He'll give us, man, that's change you find in your car seats, guys. If you got $1 million, it's like pulling out pennies out of your sofa cushions when you look at the reward that God's going to give. A private discipline. Where do you put your trust? We offer an opportunity for you to fix your life today. Remember these opportunities we have? We have to leverage the first two, but this is one that we can do. What is your answer going to be? Where are you going to put your trust? Where are you going to put your life? You're going to put it in the hands of God? You're going to do things to be seen of men? Because be on guard, people do that. Red alert, it's very easy to do that because we love the honor that's associated with it. But when you do things, you do it, you don't know what your right hand and your left hand are doing. You just do it. Because you're throwing out yourself and saying, God, I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't know how I'm going to survive. I don't know how in the world we're going to be able to do this. But I trust you. Look at your life. If you need Christ, He's here. If you need forgiveness of sins, you can receive it in the waters of baptism. If you're not a Christian, if you are, you can receive it in the prayers from the church. But the ball's in our court. Who do you trust? As we stand, as we sing the invitation song.